Hi, I'm Matthew Herzberg, and this is the Myopia Mindset. This is your weekly check-in for everything motivation, education, inspiration on your path towards success with myopia management. And I've got an awesome episode for you today. Dr. Thanh Mai is here, and I've wanted to get him on the podcast. I mean, Tan, it's been like 5 years. I mean, when I had the corrected view, you were at the top of my list. You and Ashley Tucker. I was like, I need to get these two on the podcast for interviews, and then had to take a break there. Just to let you know who he is, Dr. Thanh Mai is a visionary. He's a co-founder and managing partner of 4 optometry practice. He is the VP of innovation at Treehouse Eyes. He's a Vision Source admin, and he is also a professor of practice management at SCCO. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, so great to be here. Thanks for having me. Is this a weekly podcast? Are you always shooting this?
Yeah.
Like you, good for you.
Yep. We're doing weekly episodes, and we have a special bonus episode for our supporters if they believe in what we're doing. So let's get all that out of the way before we start the episode. Tan, if anybody has any questions for you about anything you say in this episode, how can they get in touch with you online?
Yeah, the best way is you can find me on LinkedIn, of course, at Thanh Mai. But my email address, if you want to email me, I've got like 7 different email addresses. It's like, Thanh Mai at Ketchum, or Thanh Mai at Treehouse Eyes, Thanh Mai at Vision Source, Thanh Mai at This Practice Insight Vision Optometry Corner. But the one that I use Gmail, and they all funnel. I made them all funnel to the same box at the end of the day. And so that email is everlasting. Is just my personal email, which is ThanM, that's THANHM @gmail.com.
Excellent. And like I was just saying, if you want to support the Myopia Mindset, we do a bonus episode every month. We do extended episodes of everything that you see. Supporters see a longer version of that. So more time with the interviewee, more insights, more everything. You can find all of that at myopiamindset.com. All right. Tan, here, so much has changed in 5 years since the last time I wanted to interview you. So we've got so much to talk about, but I want to make sure that I hit this point specifically, because what impressed me from the get-go is when I heard you just say in passing one day that you had started out cold at a practice. Forgive me if I'm messing some of this up. It's been 5 years, but you didn't know anything about myopia management. You just opened a practice cold, and you had a lot of really hard lessons to learn in the very beginning. And the fact that you've come this far with, like I said, managing partner at 4 optometry practices, you help docs and their staff improve their myopia management practices. So take us back to that moment when you first started, that moment.
Yeah, I remember that moment very clearly. And my professor at SCCO had told me, especially in Southern California, if you don't know about Southern California, I'm in an area where there's 2 optometry schools within an hour's drive. So we just pump out optometrists everywhere. And there's one in every corner. I go to a restaurant and I shake hands with 3 of them every time I go to any place. Mm-hmm. And so he said, Tanya, you can't open cold in Southern California. It'd be crazy to do so. And so you should try to find, ideally, an old guy who has a practice for a long time, and he needs to sell his practice and move on. And I'm like, oh, okay, that sounds like, logically that makes sense. And so I tried to find that guy, and I did find a couple of those guys, and we tried to do like a partnership to associateship to partnership to buy out eventually, right? So I'd be an associate for probably like a year, and then I'd be a partner in after if the dating goes well, you get married, and then if the marriage goes well, then eventually I get the will, at the end of the marriage, right? And so in theory that sounds great, but in my experience, and this is my experience to like even new grads, because I teach at SCCO, is that partnership is like a marriage. And while at the time I was 28, while a 28-year-old, you sometimes hear scenarios where a 28-year-old will marry a 62-year-old. in real life. But those marriages are just not as common as a 28-year-old marrying a 28-year-old,
Hmm.
right? And so when I tried to, partner with these doctors that were on their, on the back nine of the, of their golf game, um, it just, we just there was nothing wrong personally with us. We got along, but we're just trying to take the practice in a different direction. And I'm wildly ambitious in where I want to take things. And when someone's wildly ambitious and want to shake things up and want to scale to multiple locations and do a lot of things like I'm doing now, it doesn't jive with someone who's been in the same location for like 30, 40 years and is very comfortable making a good living, right? And so for that reason, the partnerships didn't work out. Three times I failed. And then I decided, after the third time, what if I just open a practice cold? One of my the one guest that I always listen to on your podcast every single time you do anything with him is Nick Despeditis.
Hmm.
Every single time you interview him, I'm always listening because that guy he's just inspirational to me. When I went to Supercharge back in 2013 was the first time I went to Supercharge. I was like mesmerized, like, oh my gosh, this is it, And he had opened Cole with a partner named Barry Tannen, and he was they did vision therapy, but then eventually Nick became the Ortho K guy, and Barry was the VT person, right? And so I said, that seems like just a good, powerful combination because pediatrics. And so I asked a buddy from optometry school, her name is Valerie Lamb, and I said she had just finished a vision therapy residency. I said, hey, like, what if you join me on this crazy journey? And so luckily she said yes. And then we opened a practice about a year. It took about a year of planning. And then we knew we wanted to make it a practice just like Nick's practice, Nick and Barry's. We're like, okay, we're going to be VT Ortho K and we're going to be all about it. We're not going to be about primary care as much. We're going to pick a couple things and just go all in and just, that's it. Like every week we're going to talk about how we can grow that side of the practice. And luckily it's gone extremely well. We basically have a practice just like Nick and Barry's now. I've got 4 locations. I've got 12 doctors that work for me. But the first one, the cold start, so I got a cold start and 3 acquisitions. The cold start has 5 doctors. We have about 20 staff there, and it's just growing incredibly fast. And a lot of people in the community now know about us, and it's just been a
Yeah.
long journey, and it's gone extremely well.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a great story because it points out there's so many great things to point out and what you said. And the first one I want to focus on is when you mentioned Southern California, because when I was a clinical sales consultant with Johnson and Johnson, and they had their regions, planned out on the map where they wanted to start selling ability. And I was like, look, it's going to be different here in California than every other place in the world because like California is like the Bible Belt for ortho K and myopia management. Like
Yep.
Californians are way more open to it. They know more about it. They're looking for this. We have large demographics that are very, very suitable towards ortho K and myopia management. So for you to open like that in that kind of environment, so not only just surrounded by other ODs, but also surrounded by ODs who are going to be doing ortho K and myopia management. And
Yep.
and that's where I want to go next because I want to talk about the hard lessons that you learned because one of the other things that you had said, keep in mind 5 years ago, so I might have gotten some of this wrong, but you had learned very quickly that it really wasn't about you and what you were offering. The story was about the patient, and you had to learn to put the spotlight on these kids that you were helping because if you made a video or had something on your website all about you and how great you are, and you are great, you wouldn't get the same kind of reaction unless you spotlighted the children that you were successfully treating myopia. And so, can you go more into that at that particular moment?
Yeah, good. So marketing is a science, not an art. Well, it's an art and science, but I believe it's actually more science than art. I'll give you an example. If I was trying to shoot a video, for instance, and I wanted patients to watch it and learn about what I offer, would I call that video "What's orthokeratology" or would I call it "What's vision therapy"? No, no one's searching "What's vision therapy" on their keyboard. They're searching for, "Hey, I've got double vision after getting hit by the head by a baseball." And so, like, when you talk about how you frame things, you have to frame it from what someone is actually interested in learning more about. So a good premise is Donald Miller's Story Brand, and it's a good book that he wrote. I love his concept called the Story Brand. Essentially, his marketing angle is that your goal as a doctor is to be a guide. So in stories, we can listen to someone lecture for maybe like 20 minutes before we just like go in and out of focus. Like we're like, oh, we just can't listen for an hour straight of a lecture. It's just not almost physically possible for almost anyone. Certainly not me. I'm listening, then I zone in and out. I'm thinking about like what's for dinner, right? But at the same time, if I'm watching like Star Wars, I can watch an entire movie of Star Wars like for 2 hours and not zone
Mhm.
out once. Why? And that's what he talks about in the book. He goes, the reason why is because humans have learned to pay attention to stories. And every good story has the same arc. It has this thing. It's the same thing again and again and again. And this is what, as a marketing person, you need to tap into because they'll pay attention to it if you frame it like a story, if you format in this way. And this way is this. Every story has obviously a hero. Every story has a villain. Every story has, an obstacle preventing the hero from defeating the villain. And then lastly, every story has a guide, usually a good one. So the guide is necessary. The hero requires a guide to help them overcome the obstacle to defeat the villain. And that's basically like Luke Skywalker, and he
Mhm.
needs Obi-Wan Kenobi to get him over to beat to get him trained up so he can defeat the Sith Lords. The reason why you need the guide in a story is logically, if a hero could defeat the villain without any help, there would be no story. He'd be like, oh well, then it's over. Like the hero is just overpowered, and he's just gonna win, right? So that's not interesting. Like when you watch a show where the hero is overpowered, unless there's some other angle in there, it's not that interesting actually. When the hero just beats up everyone instantly. But when the hero has a lot of trouble and ultimately needs someone like an Obi-Wan to show him the way, we're like, oh yeah, that logically makes sense in my brain. So I'll keep listening because the story is credible. So in optometry, the hero is the patient. Because if you talk about the patient, then they want to listen to what you have to say. So the problem that some optometrists have, especially I might have had early on, was I tried to be the hero, right? No, the goal is that you are the guide to help them defeat, in this example, the myopia monster.
Right.
And that logically makes sense. You get them to the place where they ultimately win. The goal is not to sell contact lenses and glasses or atropine eye drops or whatnot. The goal is to sell them a better outcome, a better lifestyle afterwards, a future that is much improved over current state. And so when you're talking to a patient about that, one thing I like to say is that your solution might be inconvenient. So the problem that they have must be bigger than your inconvenient solution. Your inconvenient solution requires multiple visits, thousands of dollars, and sometimes putting things into your eyeballs or putting drops in your eyes is something weird, right? Into a child. So the goal of the optometrist is to make sure that the patient understands the problem is much larger than the inconvenience of the solution. And when you create that gap in your patient education, then parents are more willing to actually pursue and make a change.
I love it. I love it. Especially with the patient is the hero and positioning that as a core part of how you practice, I think is absolute gold right there. And I think that, and I've been in practices where, the doctor is making it all about themselves. They're the hero in the story. And it's like, you know what? Being Obi-Wan Kenobi is a really good thing. Like being the guide that's helping,
Yeah.
the patient along. That's what I grew up with. I grew up in my parents' ortho K practice, and back then, that was part of that story is like, we know so much more now. There's so much more information available to parents now than there was back then. Um, let's talk about like your early successes back then as well, because I'm very interested to see like how that journey has shaped from when you started to now, because now, like I said, you're teaching other doctors and their staff how to be successful with myopia management. So let's go to that. Like when, because if I'm not mistaken, you were myopic child yourself. Like that's part of your story. Do
Yep.
you incorporate that? Did you incorporate that into your myopia management practice? And if so, like how useful is that? And should other optometrists who are interested in myopia management be adopting a similar part of that story, right? Because if the patient is the hero and you're the Obi-Wan Kenobi figure, then your story can be a part of their story as well.
Good point. Yep, exactly. And and that's why I wanted to get to the meat of in terms of this episode here is that the hero of this podcast is probably the OD, the ECP, trying to, because this is the myopia podcast, they're probably trying to do better about doing myopia management in their practice. That's the hero of this story here. You and I are going to be the guides.
Yeah.
And the goal is that whoever is listening will, after listening to this episode, ends up doing a better job in how they spread awareness of it, which is the number one villain that we have is that no one knows that this exists. And only probably, I don't know, 3 to 4% of kids ever get anything, even in the United States, because the science is far ahead of where public awareness is. The stuff we do works, but no one knows that exists. And so, if I were to try to bridge that gap for the listener here, and that's my main focus, because I've sometimes listened to podcasts and they just talk about their story all day long, and I'm like, I don't, at a certain point I don't care. But I think the reason why we want to bring up the biography is more to establish some sort of credibility. So hopefully people think I'm credible. So let me tell you what we do. So at Treehouse Eyes, for instance, we've got 70 locations, and our goal is to go in and basically have a practice of potentially doing zero myopia management to hopefully doing many cases a month, right? And so, in terms of what you asked me about, in terms of my story, yeah, there's certain elements of that I use personally that I have incorporated. I can't say this, I can't say this globally. This is what I recommend for everyone. But when you can, you absolutely use it. And then what you use is a little bit of social proof, right? Sometimes people need social proof. And so what that social proof is, I am highly myopic. I wish I had done this myself. I have 2 kids myself. So right now I've got a 9-year-old and 4-year-old. My 9-year-old is doing ortho K and atropine. My 4-year-old is on actually atropine right now. I started her even when she was pre-myopic, which is something we should probably talk about, pre-myopia. Because potentially you can stop myopia from even happening by treating pre-myopic kids. And it's almost like pre-diabetes. You don't always want to wait till they're diabetic till you do anything, right? Same thing with myopia. So as far as framing the story and what I use, yeah, I definitely do everything that I can. Before I had kids, I would use, not my family, of course, but I might use, I was doing ortho K at least on my friends that were my age. Like I have a dentist friend that does it. So I would just bring up the fact that, yeah, I've got friends and family that are doing this. So the goal is sometimes patients need a few different things. We have patients that some of them, they need just data and raw like studies and things like that. I call that person, very type A. She actually will read the research and do what's best. Then you've got the other mom who doesn't need any of that stuff. But if 5 other moms tell her to do it, she's gonna do it no matter what. Like she needs social proof. She's more driven by what other people do. And so the goal is that as soon as you can, you try to suss out what that kind of parent is. Because there's no magic script that gets a parent across the finish line. Because every parent has different motivations to why they want to change their from where they currently are to where you want them to go. And so because there's no magic script, I focus on more when I'm trying to grow myopia management practices across the country and when I lecture is that I focus more on the sales skills are important. You want some basic sales training in terms of, yes, it's better to show, not tell. You want to have some, visuals. You want to have some brochures. Hopefully, maybe you're drip marketing to the patient with text message videos about like what myopia is, because everyone lives on their phone pre-consult. So if you set up a good sequence, that's all important. But the sales training and the sales and the script is not as important as, to me, the process. And the process needs to be, you need to consider how you price things and how you set up the entire sequence of patient education. So I'll give you an example. Sometimes you have doctors that say, my conversion rate of a myopia consult is 95%. I'm like, well, great. Well, first of all, I think one of my first thoughts is if it's 95%, maybe you should raise your prices. That's the first thing I think about. When someone says, I'm booked out 5 months and I've got, 90% conversion rate. I was like, well, what if you just increase your price by double, what would happen? They probably would be crazy more. If their sales skills are that good, they would probably just increase their profit like crazy. Then they'd be able to pay their staff better. Then they can actually market better, and it all flows from that, right? So But regardless, let's go back to what I was, I went on a tangent there. But so there's certain things that can change the way your funnel works. So if you're converting 95%, the question is like, well, first of all, sure, you might want to raise your prices, but similarly, like what led the patient up to that point? I'll give you an example. Let's say you and I were on this podcast, and on this goal of this podcast, we were selling an information course afterwards. Like we're gonna sell like a master class, or we're gonna sell a club, like a myopia club. You can join this club for $100 a month. Let's say that was the goal of this podcast episode. I'm putting words in your mouth, Matt. I'm not saying you're doing this and you're trying to be shady, but like let's just assume that maybe that's for the purpose of this conversation. The goal is that we're trying to sell a myopia club after this podcast, and you and I are the owners of that club, and people get to talk to you and I on a weekly basis, and we can share ideas, and it'll probably help their practice grow. Like it would inevitably happen if you talk to us for half an hour a week, that your myopia practice would probably like triple in the next couple of years. That's probably true, by the way. But anyways, regardless, but we said, okay, so we want to know, like, let's say we've got 1,000 listeners, and we wanted to convert all 1,000. Yeah, we could. I mean, artificially, if we had said, okay, well, to listen to this episode at all, like the cost to even listen to this episode before you get to the sales pitch of joining our big course was this episode you had to pay $100 for, $200 for, $1,000 for, $5,000 for. If we price it at, let's say, $5,000 to listen to this episode, and all we gave was like, all we talked about was what we're going to teach you later.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the person that would pay $5,000 just to learn about that they could learn from us later, in theory, the capture rate should be extremely high because they're already in for $5,000, right? So same thing with myopia. Like if we charge $1,000 for a myopia consult, just for the consult, like not even treatment, how many people would hear the spiel and sign up? Like almost all of them. But guess what? How many people would sign up for that $1,000 consultation?
Right.
Like very few, right? So the question is, how narrow do you want your funnel? If you're getting a ton of leads that are overwhelming operations, then you want to narrow the funnel sometimes because ops can't handle the marketing leads. If your operations is waiting for patients because you're actually only treating 2 a month, then you want to have the widest funnel you possibly can. So for me, when you open, some people say this, hey, doc, they say, Tan, like, it must be nice to have a myopia practice, but I don't have any kids. Right. I'm like, bro, I opened cold. Like,
yeah,
I had 0 patients on day 1. It was just my mom, and she got stuff for free. And so, listen, until you have probably a $2 or $3 million office, you only have one problem. And to me, it's also same thing with if I was launching a media company, or if I was launching an ice cream shop. Like for most things, until it's a certain amount of revenue, like maybe it's $1 million for the ice cream shop. But to me, for optometry, it's probably $2 to $3 million. Where I'm like, it's not that hard to build a $2 or $3 million practice. There's really only one thing you have to do, and until people know you exist, you have no other job in terms of building a business. You don't exist anymore. It's not about your how nice you are to the patients. Every optometrist is nice to their patients. Right. So if I say in this podcast, treat your patients nice and everything will happen. No, not true, because most doctors will treat their patients nice. Treating your patients nice gets you a $1 million practice. What happens next to get the $2 or $3 million practice is you got to treat your staff very nice. And to treat your staff very nice, you need to build some processes and systems that decentralize you from leadership so that you can scale a little bit better. And then what gets you to 6 to 10 million, which I'm interested in now, is building a system that scales probably across multiple locations, because one practice can only draw from so many patients. So going back to the premise of price of saying the consult, if you're brand new, you're just getting started, and you currently are doing like 1 or 2 patients a month. 1 or 2 pages a day is pretty good. If you're only doing 1 or 2 a month, then I would say, hey, what if you should probably open up your funnel and probably do your consults nearly free if possible.
Mm-hmm.
We did the same thing in vision therapy. At one point, it was a $500 vision therapy evaluation. and our capture rate was 80% or so. And we're like, oh, that's great. 80% sign up. But we actually didn't, we were signing up a decent amount of patients. Let's say we're signing up, like we probably had like 8 consults a month, for instance. Now we'll do 30 to 50 vision therapy consults a month. And if you think about that, so the average patient that signs up in vision therapy spends five to $10,000, and that's vision therapy, right? So what we did with vision therapy is we actually decided we decided to split test it. So we A/B tested this. We said, okay, well, $500, our close rate's 80%. Well, what if we are the person that if the receptionist is amazing, he or she can close a $500 vision therapy consult, but the patient hasn't met the doctor yet, right? But what if our receptionist is not that amazing? Or what if the parent is like, $500 without knowing anything more about what I'm getting out of this? It's a hard hurdle. And so when we were doing like 5 to 10 a month with a $500 consult, our conversion rate was artificially high because people that showed up to a $500 consult, they had a big problem already that they only spent $500 for just to listen to this to a diagnosis, not even get treatment. So we decided to change it to vision therapy. What if we did for almost free? We didn't do it for free though, because there's just so much work that goes more into doing a vision therapy evaluation than myopia, that we decided to price it really low. It was like, I can't remember the exact number right now. I think it might be $49 right now. And we decided, okay, well, what happens when we do that? Because what we weren't tracking properly, which we're better about now because we actually have a CRM, but what we weren't tracking right now was, what's the phone call conversion rate? We obsess about the chair conversion rate, but we most doctors aren't listening to every phone call and seeing what the reception is filtering out, and then they don't realize the reception is scaring off hundreds of patients a month. And so what we found out was we jumped immediately, like from 5 to 10 consults a month to like 30 a month, like the next month. And we're like, okay, wow, no, but our close rate dropped. It dropped to like 65, like 60%, something like that, 65%. Because what happens is when you have someone that's only committed to $49, you have some patients that are just like, they're not kicking the tires, but they're just like, they're willing to just go along with it, see what happens, but they weren't committed yet. But the net of it is, by giving up $500, we saw like 4 times more consults. So we lose some money on the front end. Ultimately, what happens is we treat more kids. And not only do we treat more kids that year, when we do our marketing, our goal, a scalable model is when your lifetime value is how much money a patient gives you over the course of the entire lifetime with you. So as an example, let's say an ortho-K patient stays with you. I read one study that they stay with you for 7.8 years. So let's say an ortho-K patient stays with you for 7.8 years. They spend, let's just ballpark it, $3,000 year one, $1,000 every other year, right? So if they stay for about 8 years, $3,000 the first year, for 8 years afterwards, that's $3,000 plus $7,000. That's about $10,000. You subtract out the labor costs that you do to serve the patient. So let's say you have to, hire staff and there's COGS. Let's say you actually only make $5,000 over the lifetime, over 8 years. So, because you have to subtract that $5,000 for COGS and staff time. So you say, okay, well, my lifetime value is $5,000. Then what's your cost of acquisition? If you have to pay for external marketing, you have to pay for freebie consults, you pay for certain things to get the patient to the door. If it costs you $1,000 to get the patient to the door, then you got 5 to 1. Then you're like, okay, well, if it's 5 to 1, I've got a scalable model here. Right. And so when we do our advertising, I sometimes hear doctors and say, the only thing that works is internal marketing. And I'm like, how? Because if you open cold, you never get there. Right. You would never, ever get there. You get there so slowly. And my goal is to, have a $1 million myopia practice, within a few years. Right. And we've done it. We've done over $1 million in myopia, and we have one of our sites at Treehouse Eyes that does. We only do so one of our Treehouse Eyes practices. We don't sell any glasses. We don't do any vision therapy. We just do myopia only. Does over $1 million at that location too, right? But that's also a cold start. So how do you get from 0 to $1 million? You have to do some external marketing. Mm-hmm. So the external marketing is usually I would segment it in 2 different ways. it's usually B2B or B2C, broadly speaking. So if it's B2B, the good news is in 2025, most optometrists have heard about myopia management. Now, when you and Carrie were getting started in launching Vision by Design, like how many optometrists were doing myopia management like 15 years ago? What
Not
percent?
many.
What percent do you think that was?
Oh gosh. I mean, we were looking for like diamonds in the rough. So like we were looking for a niche within a niche. So I would say there's easily less than 5% of the total. And I think that's being generous at that
Yeah.
point because back then it was like, we were happy if we could just get 100 people to that meeting when we first started out. You know what I mean? So because you had all these people who had heard about it but weren't interested in it. But if you had like an AAOMC person who was like super passionate about it, you had to focus on that person. So we spent the majority of our time trying to find, your Thanh Mai, you know what I mean? You're like your Matthew Martins, your Paul Levines, people like that, your Caroline Kalkis, Brianna Ruse, those people who are just they're ready to drink from that fire hose. But to your point, a significantly small percentage of the overall potential population.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with you. It's probably less than 5%. And the Vision by Design meeting, like, is there a bigger myopia meeting like that everyone talks about than Vision by Design? No?
At the time that I ran it, no,
Yeah.
there wasn't.
Yeah,
You had components of myopia management at like GSLS, which had a great program. I'm sure they still do. And then there were small classes and other things, but VBD was it. Yeah.
I agree. Like when anyone talks about myopia management and on Facebook they're saying, where would you learn something about myopia management? Like 10 years ago, everyone's like, it just has to be VBD or AAOMC. There's that was the game, that was it, right? And still only, a few hundred doctors would show up, and it was sad that it wasn't getting as much traction as it should, in my opinion, based on the content and how great the program was. But now, luckily in 2025, at least most doctors, I'd say, even though most doctors are still not doing it, I don't know what the number is, let's say it's less than 5%, but now it's at least more than double that, hopefully, that they at least they prescribe MiSight contact lens to the kid that's in the door because they can fit soft
Right.
contact lenses. And ophthalmology is also a lot better about it now too. So the number is higher now. And so the good news is that if the optometrist now believes that myopia is a problem, which the first person everyone needs to sell is the man in the mirror. Like, do I believe myopia progression is a problem or not? And do I also believe I can do something about it? That's the first sale you have to make is the to sell yourself. Because if you don't
Right.
believe in it, you're not going to do it, right? And so that's actually a big hurdle for some optometrists that they just don't quite believe in it or have that conviction that myopia is a disease akin to
Yeah.
glaucoma.
Wait, let me stop you just for a second. Why is that? Do you have because I totally agree with you. And I think you just put it perfectly. Why do we have so many optometrists who want to do myopia management, but don't really believe in it in the way that you and I know that they should?
It's a great question. We should survey them. I did a survey once actually. Had about 1,000 people respond to the survey, and the one of my questions on my survey, if I dig it up, was, "What's stopping you from doing more myopia management in your practice?" And the survey that I have of about 1,000 optometrists was one. The reason why is because I don't know what to do clinically. That was about 50%. So even though for you and I, it's old hat of, oh, of course you would do ortho K, some atropine, maybe some soft multifocal contact lenses, eyeglasses are coming. You and I have the curse of knowing. We're like, oh, we already know. Of course, that's what you do. But we kind
Right.
of forget what it was to not know. And what a lot of doctors still don't know is, it's like treating glaucoma, but you haven't done glaucoma treatments in a decade. You're like, am I going to start with latanoprost or do I refer for SLT? Like, I don't know. And so when you don't know, sometimes you get stuck. And so I think 50% of the reason is because doctors still don't quite know and feel comfortable doing it yet, clinically.
Hmm.
The other 50% of the respondents or so, if I were to ballpark it, were just the fact that they didn't have the systems buttoned up. Like they didn't know that they made the price structure, they didn't know how to present it. They felt like price was a big problem since insurance wasn't covering it. So if insurance wasn't going to cover it, they felt that they'd have the conversation with mom. Mom says no thanks. And then they're like, well, shoot, it's hard for me to sell it. It's hard for optometrists to look at a patient in the face and say you should even wear daily disposable contact lenses than your monthlies, because we're just not always great about doing the sales.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Yeah. All right. So let's talk about a few things with Treehouse Eyes before we wrap up. And because you're, as I mentioned at the top of the show, you are, the VP of innovations with Treehouse Eyes. I want to talk about some of the innovations that I've noticed. So I might get some of this wrong, so please correct me.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about my TDA and AMP.
Yep.
I want to tell us about what those are, what excites you the most about them, and if I'm understanding correctly, there is an AI component with these two applications, and I want to know what your feelings are in the future of AI and myopia care.
Oh, I love it. Okay. So briefly speaking is my TDA is my treatment decision app. That just helps to graph, like for instance, plot points, show patients their current axial length, track it over time. Like Matt, you've got a newborn, a 3-month-old, right?
Yeah.
You've gone to the pediatrician and have they weighed, have you seen them weigh it on the little ounce thing, right?
Yep.
Baby.
Yep.
And then they say your baby is like what percentile? What did they
Right.
tell you? Do you
Yeah,
remember?
they're like the 80th percentile.
80th
Right.
percentile.
Yeah.
By the way, when you heard 88th percentile, what did you feel like emotionally? Were you like, oh, I'm glad, or were you like, oh, it seems too much, or what was your impression?
I mean, my natural inclination is it's a higher number good. So I was like, oh, cool, we're in the 80th percentile. That's good. But I don't know what that mean. I don't know what any of that means.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. You're an easygoing parent for sure. Yeah, I can tell. Because like how about this? Some moms obsess about that weight number. They're
Hmm.
obsessed about that height number. They're obsessed if their kid can't do algebra by the time they're 7, like, and
Right.
so parents love to see sometimes that weight scale of their baby growing up. And then they'll measure the kid when they're, 1 years old, 3 years old, 5 years old, and be like, okay, well, you're growing at this rate, this is your, percentile in terms of height and weight and all that stuff. And we love to see that, right? And so my TDA helps like track axial length over time. I love to plot the points and show the parents how we're going. And it also tracks refractive error. Like you were supposed to be at -7, but now we're on track to only be at -2. So I can show them that curve and they love that too. And so it helps to kind of just educate patients by showing them what I call the myopia report card, the myopia report card. I always like to do things in terms of things that patients kind of and kids know. They get myopia report cards because they get report cards at school. They don't have a contact lens insertion removal or trainer. They get the contact lens teacher. They don't, when they do the insertion removal training, they're taking lessons in classes. So anyways, so that's the myopia report card. And the AMP is the automated marketing platform. That's when like, hey, one of the biggest things that we have is mom doesn't know this exists. Because if she knew, she would do it. But the problem
Right.
that we have is that mom doesn't know it even exists. So we try to solve that gap between the consult and by the time before they come in for the consult, we try to solve that gap by everyone lives and breathes on these cell phones these days, right? And so we try to give the information to their cell phone by drip marketing them like a daily message of, hey, this is what myopia is. This is what happens when axial length goes bigger. These are some of the treatments we can do. And we kind of drip market to the patient automatically by them scanning a QR code. So they get pre-educated so that when they
Mhm.
walk in, the close rate ideally goes up because now they know what you're talking about. Then the last thing you mentioned, the thirdly, is we're doing more AI. So for instance, we created an AI bot that's based on the CAMP study that used data. And I also did another project where we pulled millions of data points to create an AI bot that would look at axial length and refractive error and risk factors like, parental history, lifestyle, and actually tell the doctor what they should do based on
Okay.
data. And
Yeah.
AI. So basically an AI doctor. And then also, hey, the patient came back in 6 months, axial length grew by 0.17 millimeters. It's a 7-year-old versus a 14-year-old. Give me different advice for that 14-year-old than the 7-year-old based off of what we're doing now on the current treatment plan. It would crunch it and tell you what to do then too. It'd be like, okay, you should probably add low dose atropine, or you should switch from soft multifocal to ortho K in this situation. And it's completely data driven. And so we have an AI that can do that now.
So what are the applications of this in the future? Like, what are we hoping to? Because I think this is awesome. First and foremost, I think my interest is super peaked right now. This is really cool. But
Yeah.
what is the future application of this in the context of? Um, I guess we have multiple buckets then, or multiple categories, because if you are just dabbling in myopia management, something like this could be an invaluable resource to help guide you towards the next step. Like, I grew up in an ortho K practice. Obviously, I think the ortho K is the best thing ever, but I'm also a huge fan of whatever's treating the patient, atropine or myosite or whatever. I'm whatever's helping the problem. I'm a fan of it. But I've encountered so many docs who are interested in ortho K and myopia management, and they want to learn. Not they don't want to just if they're given a lot of the easy mode of ortho K, that can oftentimes be very negative. And that's one of my concerns about AI is if it's treated in this instance, not just this instance, but in myopia care in general, if it's providing solutions to the doctor without the education and the context to it, I'm afraid of the potential. I'm not sure what the negative consequences would be, but
Yeah.
I don't know if it's exactly serving the best possible route. Like, I think the technology is very intriguing. I think the idea is really good, and I'm excited to see how it progresses. And I can see so many benefits to it. I'm just wondering, how far will this go? Do you think, like, if you imagine the different categories from the doesn't know a myopic kid just showed up, I don't measure for axial length, let's say, I don't know what to do with them, I don't even know where to start, maybe they don't even have a topographer. It's nice to have a resource that can help guide you towards what you should be doing next. Well, what
Right.
does this mean then for like the more seasoned myopia management specialist? Does it have application for them as well?
Good question. I think AI will probably be the most important technological innovation in our lifetime. Most likely. And that's not my opinion only, it's the opinion of a lot of credible scientists, researchers, futurists, you know. But at the same time, it might not be. But that's but most likely it potentially can be the most important thing we really master and have it definitely in the next 10 years, potentially. And I've always seen things changing rapidly, and certainly in the tech industry, people that can code now, and the ChatGPT has passed the bar exam. Like, it's getting quite good.
Yeah.
And but at the same time, where do I see it at optometry right now? To your point, it's purely just a data monster, right? In terms of how I'm using it right now, I'm just saying it literally millions of data points. It's crunching the data and sending me what it thinks is data-driven design, for instance, which is helpful if I was to get some idea into what the data would recommend. Or let's say I'm redesigning Ortho K. A lot of doctors are like, I can barely read a topography. I don't know what to do with this Ortho K design. I don't know how to start. I don't know how to redesign. Well, guess what? An AI bot can probably figure out what the next step would be to actually get you a better outcome. Based on pure data, it would understand how to read a topography and redesign a lens. But at the same time, to your point, Matt, like, most parents at the end of the day, like, we have philosophy at Treehouse Eyes. And when I'm educating doctors, I say at the end of the day, mom wins, not you. And so, like, your data might say for this patient, we're doing atropine at 0.05% versus 0.01%. Like, but it kind of doesn't matter if mom doesn't want to do it.
Hmm.
And so what I've learned is that if you, as long as the patient is doing something, and mom is all about doing that one thing, whether that's ortho-K, atropine, soft multifocals, eyeglasses, I'm already ahead of the 97% of kids that get nothing today. And so I don't care what an AI bot would tell me, or artificial intelligence, or what the data tells me, or what anyone tells me, because if mom doesn't do it, it's not going to be, it doesn't matter anyways. So my goal is not to be efficient or right. My goal is to be effective. And to be effective, I have to listen and work with the patient. And so that's where AI will have a gap. AI is not currently even widely accepted by every person. There's certainly a fear behind it. There's certainly, like, I'm not sure if I would trust this, certainly in medical care. I think that AI being, like, driving doctors out of business is probably not going to happen in the next 20 years, actually, because people will not trust a bot to make all the decisions at the end of the day. They just won't. There are
Right.
some that will, but there are many that won't. And they would at least want someone to at least vet the AI, because AI is not there yet. Even definitely not today, where it still makes tons of mistakes. And for medicine, you don't make any mistakes at all. And so, but now a doctor assisted by AI absolutely would be a doctor not using AI. So when I do my lecture yesterday, I did a lecture on Tuesday to the 100 kids at SECO. I told them, who's using AI on a daily basis? Like two of them raised their hand. I said, everyone needs to use AI on a daily basis. Like I want you to download at least a ChatGPT app on your phone right now. And I want you to see your next patient in the clinic because you still barely know what you're doing. And before the preceptor, before they grill you, ask the AI all your questions first and have it guide you so you don't make a mistake, you don't look stupid in front of the preceptor. And they're like, oh gosh, that's yeah, they're gonna do it now. They're like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. And because that's where we're going. And it should at least assist you to make the right decision, but it won't replace you.
Yeah, I think the practical application, like you're saying, is as a tool, right? Like as a resource to the practitioner. When I think of like ortho K consultation, that was one of the things that I got a great education on again at J&J, because when I was with the AAOMC, my clinical knowledge was next to nothing. I was all practice management, administrative. I knew the core concepts. I was effectively a myopia coordinator, I guess is what you would call it, is what I grew up doing in my parents' practice. So it's like when it came to the clinical principles, the clinical side of ortho K, I knew nothing, but I got to learn a lot about that by working with the ability lens. And the amount of hesitation from a practitioner who's especially brand new to ortho K, where they're like, well, we put the lenses on the patient, they slept in them, we saw them the next day, we saw them after 1 week, and this is what we saw. I want to start making adjustments. And you're like, okay, well, hold on a second. Everything's looking good. Maybe we don't make adjustments. Maybe we just let this sit for a couple of weeks and see what happens. And there's so much confusion around what do I do with a fit when things don't go as expected. And I think that this is a huge place where AI can help out, for instance, right? Because there's
Absolutely.
only so many Mark Cosgroves in the world, or Steve Ernst, or Barb Ellers, these like really great consultants around ortho K specifically. And there's a higher volume of these cases, to have that kind of busy work be done by the AI as a tool, I think is a huge benefit. And I think what you're describing, especially with what y'all have already done at Treehouse Eyes and what you're developing, I think is just speaks to that future. As somebody who does use AI every single day, I can tell you it's an amazing tool and resource. Like it helps me out in so much. Like for this episode, for instance, we're recording this episode. I'm going to get the transcript of this episode. I'm going to feed it into ChatGPT. I'm going to say, come up with chapters, come up with a description, an episode title, and come
Mhm.
up with some great follow-up questions for when I have Thanh Mai back on the Myopia Mindset. And it's going to do all that for me. That would have taken me hours and hours to do on my own. So like I'm a huge a fan of AI as a tool. And I don't think it will put docs out of business, at least not myopia management docs. Do you agree with that? Because there's so much more to myopia management than just fitting a lens or doing drops.
That's right. If 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 science and data was like was all that was important, like we'd be all fitter and healthier. But
Yeah.
there's a human component, like
Yes.
you and I know how to get six-pack abs. We
Right.
just haven't done it yet. We just don't want to do the work sometimes, right? So it's not
Yeah.
about science and knowledge. We don't need more knowledge. And so AI just kind of gives us intelligence and knowledge sometimes, but it doesn't actually execute. It doesn't empathize. It can't convince a mom to do what she potentially could do because mom might want to not hear it from AI. Now there's some moms that would, yeah, by the way.
Right.
Yeah, and there's AI therapists out there even too that never get tired of listening to you complain. And they're extremely helpful based on the data I've read. But at the same time, some people just need to talk to another person, right? And so AI for today and probably for the next few years, for the next 5, 10 years, it's just gonna be a tool that doctors use. It's gonna make us incredibly more efficient. It's gonna remove that tribal knowledge that a Mark Cosgrove has about how to redesign his ortho lenses and make it so that everyone is as good as Mark Cosgrove, like that,
Hmm.
out of school. Because we can just feed it topography and data, and they'll tell you this is what you do next, dummy. And so it eliminates tribal knowledge because it has everything that we've ever taught it. So that's where it gets exciting.
Yeah, and if you can pair that with somebody who is an expert, who has a lot of years of experience, who then can act more as a mentor to you, like then you can actually learn along the way in addition to getting this information. And I'm hoping that that's the future. That's a future component for myopia management because I think that's the best of both of these worlds for sure.
Exactly. Yeah. We have, I've got many business partners, and sometimes need to break a tie, we ask ChatGPT, and it's like, well, it's pretty objective, depending on the prompt. And sometimes it breaks our tie.
Awesome, awesome. Todd, thank you so much for coming on this episode. Like I said, this could be another couple of hours. I definitely want to have you back because I have way more questions to ask you. We didn't even get to half of the ones that I had planned for us, but I kind of figured that would be the way to be. And that, so thank you so much. This is your another opportunity for you. If anybody's interested in getting in touch with you or finding out more information about you online, how can they do so?
Yeah. They can find me on LinkedIn. I think there's Thanh Mai. I would just Google Thanh Mai optometrist and LinkedIn, and my LinkedIn would come up. They can connect with me there. They could also email me directly at thanem@gmail, THANHM@gmail.com. And yeah, happy to help anyone.
Awesome. And this is the part where I start selling. If you have loved this episode, if you love myopia management, whether you are an expert fitter or you're just starting out, the Myopia Mindset is for you. And you can help us by supporting our mission to spread the word about myopia management. And what I like to say is, the cost of our paid supporter is $12 a month. That's basically a cup of coffee each and every week, if you really think about it. And if you would buy me a cup of coffee to have on amazing guests and nerd out about myopia management for a couple of hours, then please consider supporting the Myopia Mindset. You can do so by going to myopiamindset.com or at our Substack, myopiamindset.substack.com. And at the very least, if you enjoyed this episode, give us a 5-star review wherever you found it. Share it with as many colleagues as you can. This is what's awesome about myopia management, and everybody needs to know more about it. All right. Well, that's going to be it for this episode. So thank you again, Tan. And for everybody else, we'll see you at the next one.